Okay, well, so Mom, you know how the classical and all the way to the information age of the internet and stuff?
Uh-huh.
And so I kind of stumbled upon an interesting math thing, at least I think it's interesting,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of a math rule
Mm-hmm.
that I found, which basically means that every age, like every major period we divide history into, is half as long as the one before it.
Ah.
Because things are increasing and improving so quickly.
Uh-huh. Is there a name for this, or just...
No, because I just made it up. But,
You made it up!
yeah, but I actually tested it, and it kind of works.
You tested it on a calculator?
Yeah, it's a math thing.
Oh. Okay. So how would you explain it?
Okay, we'll start about with this number, negative 3,090.
Okay.
So imagine this represents 3090 BCE,
Okay.
which is about when civilization was starting.
Okay.
Egypt and Sumer, the Indus Valley,
Okay.
all those. And then we're going to add to that about 2,560 years.
Okay. And
Go with me, this will make sense soon.
okay.
And that many years after that gets us to about 530 BCE.
Okay.
And this period, this is your ancient, like I said, this is your ancient civilizations: Egypt, Sumer, the Indus Valley.
Okay.
And then at 530 BC is about when we're starting to get like ancient Greece, ancient Rome, the later classical civilizations, the Persian Empire.
Okay.
And then, so you know how long this period was.
Okay.
So we're gonna fast forward half that distance,
Okay.
1,280 years, which gets us to 750,
Okay.
which is which is close to when is considered the fall of the classical era and the beginning of the medieval times, and it was also
The fall of what?
the fall of the classical era.
Oh, okay.
Ancient Greece and Rome was a bit after that, but actually about when the medieval era was beginning in Europe,
Okay.
and important stuff was happening starting outside Europe all this time. The Sui and Tang dynasties in China, the rise of Islam.
Okay.
And so then then the next period is going to be half as long again, 640 years, which gets us to about 1390,
Okay.
which is generally considered about the time when the Renaissance was starting.
Okay.
When the Renaissance was starting in Europe.
Okay.
And then go forward 320 years, again half the length of the previous period, which gets us to 1710,
Ah.
which is kind of about when the world was beginning to industrialize, or at least Europe.
Yes.
The rest of the world would industrialize later.
Okay.
Then the next period is going to be 160 years.
Okay.
So that gets us to 1870.
Okay.
Like I said, during this time the world's starting to industrialize. And the next period is 80 years, which gets us to 1950, which is when we're getting lots of important stuff like the radio and penicillin, and the world wars happened, and we developed the nuclear weapons and all sorts of stuff. And then another period half the length gets us to 1990, which is, during that period was the Cold War and the Cold War basically.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of stuff happened. So that period ended up about 1990.
Mm-hmm.
The internet in its current form began in 1991, and because that period was 40 years, cut in half, the next period is going to be 20 years, which gets us to 2010, which is close to now. So that's kind of the internet age.
Very good point.
The only real problem I can see with this is that then the next period would last 10 years, which means it would end in 2020, and I don't know what's going to happen then.
Yeah, and
Maybe something.
And I wonder if that affects people too. Do you think it might make us more anxious? I would think so, because change, I think, tends to make people anxious. I mean, that's a kind of a deep thing too.
But maybe something. And the other problem with this is that because when you start with a number, and then you add half of that number, and then half of that, and half of that, and continue on, it doesn't go on forever. It eventually ends. It has a limit, as you say in mathematics.
Mm-hmm. True.
So if you keep adding periods that are half the length of the previous one, it won't continue going on forever. It will eventually end in 2030, and obviously history is not going to end in 2030. So it isn't exactly like this.
Right. But it's still an interesting concept.
An interesting thing that I found.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know, maybe it's just a weird coincidence. It doesn't actually mean anything, but
I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop.